Okay, so here's another word problem that we need to use dimensional analysis for. So it's a real life problem because this is one that I have to do every year when I'm ordering sodium hydroxide. I try to save money and this stuff is not cheap. So here's what we got. We got me, a chemistry teacher, and I needed to determine how much sodium hydroxide, a common chemical we use, to order. So I know that each student will use 130 grams of sodium hydroxide every semester. And I know that there's 60 students roughly that I have each semester. I want to know how many kilograms of sodium hydroxide I should order, because that is the quantity that it comes in. I order it by the kilogram. So, as we do with all of our dimensional analysis problems, we state what we are converting from and what we are converting to. So, what we're going to is quite clearly kilograms of our sodium hydroxide. Now, sodium hydroxide, you wouldn't know this, but since I want to save space, is abbreviated NaOH. You will learn that eventually, but not today. And the question is, what are we starting with? Well, we know that each student will use 130 grams, and there are 60 students. How many kilograms of sodium hydroxide should the teacher order? So, what we're trying to understand here is that the problem is giving us some extra information that we need. But the bottom line is that the whole point of this problem is that I have students in the class and each of them needs a certain quantity of the chemical, which leads me to then having to order a specific amount of the chemical. So what I'm really trying to do here is convert my number of students to a total number of chemical. So I'm trying to convert students to quantity of chemical, and in this case, kilograms of chemical. And what the problem is giving me is a conversion factor for one student, where it says each student will use a specific amount of chemical, and that being 130 grams of sodium hydroxide, or NaOH, which is how we abbreviate that. So, that means I can go between one student and grams of sodium hydroxide, and then I can go between grams and kilograms of sodium hydroxide. I know that there are 10 to the 3 grams of NaOH equal to 1 kilogram NaOH. Right? So, now that I've got my conversion information, I can solve my problem. How many students? Well, it was 60 that I was trying to convert from. Which means what needs to go on the bottom? Students. What conversion factor has students in it? Well, this one. So one student goes on the bottom. 130 grams of NaOH goes on top. Cross that one out. Next conversion factor must have grams of NaOH on the bottom so that it cancels out. That's this one, and that means 1 kilogram goes on top of NaOH. So it's 10 to the third on the bottom and 1 on top. Let's make sure everything cancels out properly. Students. Grams of NaOH, grams of NaOH. And look, I'm ending up with kilograms of NaOH, which is what I want. Kilograms of sodium hydroxide, that's what I want. Now let's simplify. Alright, I'm gonna, whoops, I want red. Let's try this. Let's go ahead and move it down here. So we'll have 60 times 130 kilograms of NaOH. And that will all be divided by 10 to the 3. We'll do 60 times 130, which is 7,800 kilograms of NaOH. That will all be divided by 10 to the 3. Remember, if we have 10 to the positive 3 in the denominator, if we move that to the numerator, it becomes to the negative 3. So that becomes 7,800. Let's make the zeros a little more clear. Times 10 to the negative 3 kilograms of NaOH. And it looks like we do not want this in scientific notation. So if our 0 or our decimal point is here, we completely take it out of scientific notation. We want to make this larger by 3 place values to get it to 0. So we'll move this to the left. 1, 2, 3. That would be larger left. All right? Which means our final answer is 7.8 kilograms of NaOH. And that is a lot of NaOH. All right, and there you have it. You follow the steps of how to do this every time, you'll get it right. You'll see that these problems take time. They're tedious. But, again, you follow the steps, you will be just fine.